Hey, you know, school is starting up in just a couple of weeks, and a lot of teachers, support staff are already back in the classroom, and that's certainly the case for one of my guests today. We're going to do Back to School for Parents today, and I think you'll find this conversation very, very interesting. Even if you're not a parent today, I think it will give you a picture of what school is really like today. You can compare that to how it was when you were in school, and then if you're a grandparent, it's good reinforcing information for families. So we have Keith Noren. Keith Noren is a 6th and 7th grade math teacher right there down in the depths of the front line at Christ the King School. So Keith, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and we also have Greg Fancher, and he is the Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Education at Kennewick School District. And Greg, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
It'll
good.
be fun.
I think it should be. I hope so anyway. And we really want to invite people to call in. If you've got a question you want to pose, you want to make a comment, 547-8726. Remember, I told you to put that in the phone so you can just punch it and bring your question up here and get on the air. All right, let's start with, you know, so back to school is in a couple of weeks, and I'm thinking, I still, as a parent, those folks still have a couple of weeks to kind of prepare for the start of school. The end of summer, the start of school. Greg, what should people be thinking about?
I think one of the first things is to talk real positively with kids about school, to try to get them ready for it, because there's a lot of fear of the unknown. You know, who's my teacher going to be? Who's going to be in my classroom? Am I going to like my teacher? Am I going to be successful this year? So a lot of it's just to help kids to feel good about what they're doing, to focus on their success from last year, the things that went really well for them, and just get them mentally ready for that brand new school year.
Talk positive. Okay, that's a good piece of advice. What about you, Keith? What would you offer to parents about that?
Well, first, I agree with Greg and his points, but also I would talk about establishing a routine, whether it's, when you wake up, when you go to bed, certain chores. Kids thrive on routine, through all the grades. So I would say get a routine, make it as consistent as possible.
Oh, okay, so that's now Keith is, this is his 5th year. So you don't have like 25 years of experience, but even in those 4 years, you're saying, here's what I've observed, kids need routine, is that right?
Exactly. The kids have so much, else going on, especially as a middle schooler with hormones and changing bodies, that if they can bank on the same routine, that's just one less thing they have to worry about.
Ooh, okay. What about that, in the summertime, I know a lot of families kind of blow out the when you go to bed. And what are some, good sleep times for children at various ages? Do you know that? Am I just pulling that piece of that question out of the air here, or do you have any idea, Greg?
Well, I think, if you read a lot of the research that's been published lately, it really talks about the importance of sleep and getting a good night's sleep. So it's not only that kids get a good 8 to 10 hours of sleep a night, kind of depending on their age, but it's also that things like they're sleeping without the TV on. They're sleeping before they go to bed. Some of the research says you shouldn't really be looking at your computer or any kind of a blue screen, because that affects your sleep patterns at night. So it's just having that nice quiet time before you go to sleep to kind of rest your mind and rest your body and be prepared for a really restful night's sleep.
We put Harley to bed at 8:30 during school time.
Yeah.
And she's going to be in 2nd grade up there at Vista, and that seems to work pretty well.
And what time does she get up then?
We wake her up around 6:45.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because it depends. If she bounces up and gets ready right away, then it's 7. If not, I tell her we'll wake her up at 4, and then she goes to bed. But yeah, about 8:30, because then she doesn't feel like it's too early, and she still gets plenty of rest. So, and then our son at Kennewick, Dylan, I'm going to bed. I'm tired.
Yeah.
So we don't worry about him.
Yeah. So that's really, probably the most ideal situation is that kids are worn out, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Keep them active, and then, the routine, their body will tell them, when to go to sleep and when to wake up.
And that thing with the computers, too, is true, because we've noticed if she's been playing on her Navi or something, it's kind of harder to get her to wind down a little bit. So there is a lot of validity to that, folks. Make sure that they haven't been on for a little while before they hit the hay.
Yeah, and they also talk about, so what's your diet look like before you go to sleep? Not to drink pop or eat candy, any kind of stimulant before dinner time, or before bedtime, excuse me, which is really a hard thing for me to do.
Really?
nice candy bar before you go to sleep is kind of nice, you know.
Okay, but for children, no. Cut
For
that
children,
out.
right, that's
Yeah.
right.
All right. I like those ideas, obviously, about setting up the routine and not waiting until the first night before school starts the next day. Then, yeah, you're already too late for that. I'm thinking that an ideal situation is for parents to create some kind of a plan with their children about what is school going to be for you this year. And if you agree with me that a plan is a good idea at the start of the year, what do you think that those plans should include? I'm going to start with you, Keith.
Well, first off, I think any plan made should be a conversation between the family members and the student. And then, you know, the next part is, you know, making sure it's realistic and then following through. If the plan falls apart after a month, which we see a lot of times, you know, students are excited for the first month and then they start sliding downhill, you know, what's going to happen if things slide downhill? And just to make those consequences or rewards realistic and make sure you follow through.
Mm-hmm. What would some of those things in the plan be?
You know, I would just think, you know, depending on the goal, depending on, you know, the particular child, things like, you know, are you going to make it to school on time every day? Are you going to turn in your assignments every day? You know, how are you going to behave? Are you going to be receiving any phone calls, you know, around dinner time from your teacher? Just, you know, those black and white basic things, which I think kids can relate to and understand.
Mm-hmm. How important is it, in your experiences, both of you, is it that the two parents, if there are two parents, two guardians, whoever is in a role of supervision of that child, agree to the plan as adults? Is that important?
I think one of the things that Keith said hit it right on the head. You know, it's important that you sit down and talk about the plan, so both parents and the kids have ownership in what that plan is. And I think another part that's really important is that the plan's got some clear goals to it. You know, even for kids as young as kindergarten, as long as they have targets and specific things that they're working towards, it really helps them to be focused on school. You know, whether it's things as simple as by Christmas he's going to be able to write his name and read his name, or, you know, to read, 20 sight words by Christmas time. Those kinds of really specific goals help to motivate kids. The tough thing for parents is to keep after those goals and monitor the kids' progress and provide feedback on those goals and all those kinds of things.
Well, wow, though, as a parent, how would you even know that? How would you even know that for a kindergartner those would be some typical goals? I wouldn't know that. What would I do?
So one of the things that we do, and I think is pretty common in all three of the big districts anyway, is we have kindergarten conferences at the beginning of the year. So I just ask the teacher, or even if you didn't go to a conference, what kinds of things are you going to be working on this year? What can I expect to see out of my student in terms of performance and work that comes home that I can kind of monitor and talk with them about? And that's a real easy thing, I think, for teachers to do.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. You know, I think, you know, even at the middle school level, you know, parents come and ask me, you know, what they should expect from their child. And I think as long as they understand that teachers, you know, should have the well-being of the child, you know, placed first, that if we're all on the same team, then we can communicate and good things will happen.
Communicate. We're going to learn more about what is good communication and what maybe is poor communication. Also, folks, have you heard that term, helicopter parenting? Maybe you're wondering, what does that mean? Well, we're going to find out coming up. Stay with us. This is Meet in the Middle, and I'm Christine Brown. We're going back to school, but this is for parents. My guests are Keith Noren. He teaches 6th and 7th grade math at Christ the King School. We also have Greg Fancher. He is Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Education with the Kennewick School District. So if I think about the continuum of parents or guardians of children in school, I think about one on the far end is neglectful parents. Then I think about the center, which would be maybe involved or supportive. And then on the far end, the opposite end, I think about those people who are helicopters. So they got to know everything. What is a helicopter parent? Keith, I'm going to ask you.
My definition of a helicopter parent is someone who is so on top of their child or their children that they prevent any mistakes from happening, or they're the ones who solve all of the mistakes or problems that their kids might run into.
Oh, Wow. They even do some of their science projects, I bet.
Of course.
Or some of their math projects.
Right.
So
Sometimes
so-
their handwriting looks really good, and then sometimes the next day it might not look so good.
Oh. So what have you observed is a problem with that? What's wrong with that?
Well, I think, and especially as a middle school teacher, where I consider middle school really warm up for high school, is that when middle school kids, if they have an issue and they themselves don't have to take responsibility and solve it, by the time they get to high school, if something comes up in a freshman or a sophomore class, they have no idea how to cope with it. And then that's when their grades can really hurt, and that affects their future.
Yeah. So sometimes failure's okay?
I think so. I think it
Yeah.
should definitely happen. Everyone should experience it.
Yeah. I was telling Greg before that I wanted to, come clean and apologize to a bunch of educators at the Kennewick School District where my kids went to school. I may have been involved in some of that helicoptering, so sometimes, yeah, it's really hard. It seems that another area there is like separation anxiety that you see between children and parents, and a lot of what you see today is actually the mothers who are suffering the anxiety, not the child. What can we do to ease that, or like mothers back off a little bit, huh?
It's really interesting to be outside of a kindergarten room the first day of school and to
Yes.
watch the moms who are bringing their oldest child to school for the first time. And kind of what we try to keep in mind is it's a brand new experience for everybody. For a mom, they're looking at school from a completely different perspective than they ever had before, and they're giving their child away to people that they're really meeting for the first time. And so we try to do everything we can to help them to feel comfortable, and just to recognize it's a very stressful time. It's not uncommon to see, after that door closes to the kindergarten classroom, to see moms kind of hugging and crying a little bit, and it's a really tough time. It happened to us, like as school people, sending our kids for the first time. It's a really emotional thing.
So what can you do to eliminate some of that? I mean, obviously for first grade or for kindergarten, are there other kinds of socialization that you can do before you get to that age 5 or 6?
Sure, I think, we always talk about the importance of preschool and just getting kids into that routine of school, teaching them things as simple as how do you walk down the hallway, how do you go to the bathroom by yourself, how do you ask for help on something. Just those really simple things that sometimes we forget about because as adults, we just do them, and we know how to do those kinds of things. And the other thing, too, is I think it helps the parents a little bit, too, because now they learn to trust other folks, and most importantly, they see that their kid can be successful in an environment outside of their home, and they can cope with some of the issues that are going to come up.
Yeah. Another education term that I've heard kicked around is called redshirting, and that is when parents try to hold their child back as long as possible age-wise, so that when they do go to school, they are the oldest in the class and maybe the largest in the class. And here's where I have to, raise my hand, like I did that too some 20 years ago. But has it become more prevalent today, or are there ways that you're kind of discouraging or preventing that? What's the pros and cons of that?
We talked about that earlier when we were talking about the interview today. And so I called a couple of our elementary principals who've been around for a while and said, have you seen a difference in terms of parents either holding kids back or wanting them to come earlier? And they said really the percentage is about the same. There hasn't been a big change. And it's probably more true for boys to be held back or not to enter kindergarten right away than for girls, just because boys mature physically and mentally a little bit later than the girls do. But there hasn't been a big change. Interesting thing is, for some parents, not a lot, but for some parents, it's about athletics and the advantage you have from being bigger, stronger, faster as you go through school as an athlete. And that really doesn't necessarily hold out to be true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the term originated in the NCAA. It's a term.
Yes.
It's true. You're given 5 years to play 4, and
Yeah.
the kid comes in from high school. If he's obviously got skills, but he's not big or strong enough, they redshirt him. He practices and does everything with the team, and then eventually, if he stays in school, he'll become what they call a fifth-year senior, and that's where the term originated.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back to the helicopters, Keith, and how have you learned to interact with those parents and maybe try to manipulate it into a situation that's better for the kids?
Well, first I try to, I know we've talked about it before, but communicate as much as possible. You know, I personally, every Friday or every last day of the school week, I send out, you know, blanket email to all of my families just to give them conversation starters. So hopefully the parents realize, okay, they are doing something at school and I don't have to be involved, you know, every single step of the way. And, you know, just communicating, being open, and, you know, promoting to the students that they need to be the ones, you know, doing their own work.
What do you mean? What is in this email? Just the things that you've covered during the week, or some questions? This is all about math, so some of the items that you've covered that week?
Definitely. And last year I did teach 6th grade social studies as well, so this upcoming year is new for me. So I had a few different subjects, including religion, to discuss. And there's always homeroom items. Here's what's coming up on the calendar, maybe a couple sentences of, you know, a story or something that we experienced. So nothing overly specific, but just enough where the parents could ask their kids, hey, I saw you're, you know, learning how to divide fractions, you know, how's that going? Things like that.
That seems like an excellent idea, because, and I'm sure that other teachers do that or something like that as well, because you know, as a parent, you say, hey, how was school today? Fine. That's what you get. I mean, it's universal. So having something very, very specific to ask, was that hard, those fractions that you were learning this week? What did you, anything about it? So it gives you some specifics. That seems like workable solution there. I like it.
We used to do that thing around where we'd sit around the table every night. Kids would have to tell us about one thing that happened at school, and we couldn't eat until somebody said more than nothing. You know?
Ah, okay. So, but, you know, that's a good point right there. Just having dinner together as many nights of the week as possible seems like a very valuable. I know that we have gotten away from that quite a bit. Has to do with people's working hours, children being involved in sports and all of that. But having at least a couple nights a week where that is collected seems like a good idea. If you've got a question for our group today, go ahead and give us a call, 547-8726. All right, what are some other ideas that parents can be involved and be supportive and be knowledgeable without being over the top or without being neglectful? What are some of those things that parents can do?
Well, I think it's, you know, just having a discussion about the plan for the student and encouraging them to go, you know, make the adult decision. You know, I know in my class, you know, a 6th grader or 7th grader, you know, is going to forget his assignment or forget her book, and then, you know, if a parent comes and tells me, oh, Johnny forgot his book, then I might not be as lenient. Whereas if Johnny shoots me an email or says, oh, hey, Mr. Noren, I forgot my book, it's tough enough to have those conversations, you know, as a 12-year-old. I remember when I was 12, I didn't want to talk to anybody, you know, let alone, you know, my teacher when I made a mistake. So if I promote the fact that, hey, come talk to me and things are going to be okay, and if I prove that consistently, then I think that shows kids that, all right, if I handle it, it's going to go better than if I have my parents trying to fight my battle for me.
Oh, all right. So working with the kids on that as well, the students.
Exactly.
Yeah, that sounds good. What about some other ideas, Greg?
Sure, there's some great technology tools out there too. As kids get older, you know, and the teachers keep a pretty detailed grade book. I think in Kennewick for sure, and I believe in Richland and Pasco, you can actually get parent access to those grade books, and you can look at your kids' scores every day. You can look for missing assignments. You can see how they're progressing in each of their classes.
The parent portal.
The parent
Yes,
portal. There you go.
Yeah.
And you can even get an email automatically sent to you from a teacher on your kid's progress that week or that month, however you want to do that. And it's a great way to kind of stay on top of your kid's performance and be able to talk to them about, okay, what's going on in school related to each of your classes.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also on the opposite end of that. It has to be pretty frustrating when you see a child struggling, and you can also see that, I mean, you're guessing or assuming that they've got some issues at home. So how can you counteract that? Because you're just the school environment. You're not the home.
Sure. Well, first I want to say that, you know, I'm consistently impressed with how resilient some kids are. You know, through kindergarten through 8th grade, you know, I've seen kids where I know they're having difficulties, you know, outside of school, but then they still show up and they're, you know, some of our best students, and it's just really impressive to me. But I think just, as a teacher, first day, I tell them that, I'm supportive of them. They can contact me. They all have my email. They can, reach me at any time. Just to, let the kids know that, adults are here for you. We're willing to help. It's our profession that we chose, to help you, not only academically, but socially as well.
Okay.
I think one of the huge things too is, and Keith kind of touched on it, is how do you build a relationship with those kids, a positive adult relationship? Because in all of the stories you hear about people who kind of pulled themselves up by the bootstraps, came from difficult situations, all of them have a mentor or an adult who really inspired them to get there. And so part of it is how can you do that as a teacher and build that relationship with that kid so they have somebody they can trust and communicate with. We even have gone so far as we have a safety survey that we do each year. And one of the questions we ask the kids in the safety survey is, do you have a trusted adult at your school? So we can kind of track that progress and see that kids are making connections with adults throughout the system, because that's really the issue. You can't teach anything or do anything in your classroom until you've developed that strong, trusting relationship with your kids.
All right, that sounds really important. Should a parent volunteer in their own child's classroom? What do you think about that? What's your experience, Keith?
I personally think that parents should volunteer. My classroom very rarely calls for parent volunteers. I don't want them planning any assignments or grading any papers. But there's always a few days a year where it's nice to have an extra adult, an extra body there, especially when food is involved, end of the year party. But I certainly don't want any parents showing up unannounced or without a plan at any point.
Okay. All right. That would be unacceptable. I mean, completely to show up unannounced, wouldn't it?
It is, but it has happened before.
Oh dear. Okay.
And usually the case is, at the end of the school day, it's 3:15, and I'm trying to plan for the next day or the next week, and a parent comes in. They want to just have a 1-minute conversation and pop in, and then an hour and a half later we're still talking, and I'm not going to kick them out. At the same time, there's other stuff that I want to be doing.
Yeah, so appointments are important.
Exactly.
Yeah, as well. Okay. That's one of the things that I always really appreciated as a parent in some of the schools that my children were at, is that I saw other parents there volunteering. And because I worked all the time, I couldn't volunteer maybe as much as I wanted to, but I sure appreciated their involvement. I thought it made the school better. I did, however, volunteer in the office in middle school at Desert Hills, and when parents came in, they were all worried that they saw me digging in the files because actually what I was doing was, my job was to file the sick notes why the child was not in school. But it did look pretty odd for a news person to be digging in the files there at school. But I do appreciate people that are involved. Do you encourage parent participation?
Sure.
In the Kennewick School District?
We do. We ask the same kind of things, though, that it's that it's scheduled, and the teachers have a chance to think about something parents can do that's productive in the classroom, and give them a chance to define kind of a role, talk to them about some things that they'd like to do to support the class, whether it's to help prepare materials for the next day, to listen to kids read, whatever kind of parents works for them.
All right. Great. We're going to take a break here. We'll be back. If you've got some questions, 547-8726. We've got more to learn about how parents can really help their children be successful in school. Stay with us. We're back to School for Parents today. We've got two guests in our studio. We're welcome to your calls as well, 547-8726. My guests are teacher Keith Noren. He's now entering his 5th year of teaching. Teaches 6th and 7th grade math, even social studies at Christ the King School in Richland. Greg Fancher, Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Education at KSD, Kennewick. So I want to talk a little bit about bullying. And obviously, there are many different levels of bullying, and I don't think that we can ever get rid of bullying. Come on, it's just it's how humans interact, but it can be very, very damaging as well. So from a parent point of view, what can a parent do if they see or observe or somehow know that their child is being bullied? What should they do? Greg, I'm going to start with you.
So I think the first thing to do is to get on top of it as soon as they can. To go in and talk. I would always start with the teacher, because the teacher sees what goes on between the kids every day and the interactions between the kids. So I would always start there and talk about your concerns and be as specific as you can be, because bullying is kind of like saying I have the flu. And we really want to know what are the behaviors that your kids are experiencing that are causing some problems. So the more specific you can be, whether it's physical kinds of things, it's name calling, it's note passing, and then the teacher can react more effectively to those things the more specific you can be about it. But that's always the first step, is to go to the teacher and talk to that teacher right away.
Go to the teacher. Is that your experience, Keith?
I agree with that. Go to the teacher or go to some professional at the school. And then I think on top of that, one of the worst things you can do is then go spread it to the rest of the families of what you heard, especially if we're not 100% sure it is true. Having 30 rumors flying around before the teacher can even get back to school the next day is not good for anybody.
Mm-hmm. What about if your child tells you things that doesn't affect your child, but maybe it's something that your child has observed? Is that important or an obligation of the parent to pass that on?
So I'd probably put a little different twist to that. One of the things that we're trying to do within our schools is to have a campaign where we try to get the kids to talk to adults about the things they see, and not let the parents take that on. And so we want the kids, as an elementary example, if there's things going on in the playground that are inappropriate and some kids feel that they're seeing someone else get bullied or just being treated inappropriately, we want those kids to go talk to a teacher, to the principal, to one of the playground aides, whoever the most appropriate person would be there, because that trains them to be adults and not to feel like they're being a snitch or it's a bad thing to tell on somebody. But we need kids to help us deal with those problems early.
Yeah, that sounds like a smart strategy, getting children in a position where they feel comfortable that they can be the ones that provide the information. Can they do it anonymously? Is it anonymous?
Sure, like
Yeah.
you can do, we have a page on our website where you can give anonymous tips to the school district. You can write
Yeah.
notes to the teachers. But I do have to say, it's really difficult to react to anonymous things, because
Oh,
you
okay.
really need to investigate.
Oh,
and be
I
able to ask
don't mean that
questions
there's
and
not a
things.
name attached, but that the whole school doesn't know that it was Johnny, the one who told on Sam, that type of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a problem.
Okay.
And I think it's important to realize, on the note of being anonymous, that, as a parent, if you report something, as a teacher, I'm not going to tell you, what punishment I've given out to this other child or what conversation I've had with the other parent. Every conference a teacher has with, a parent and a child, that remains private. That's just professionalism. So just because your child didn't hear, that Johnny, we're picking on Johnny a lot today, just because
Yeah.
your kid doesn't know that Johnny got in trouble, doesn't mean that Johnny wasn't talked to.
Yeah. Okay. So after that, it's none of my business. That's what you're telling me, huh?
Correct.
Back off. All right.
Report it, and then let us do our job.
Okay, good. So I want to know a little bit about technology, and it seems to me that a child would be at a significant disadvantage if they happen to be in a home that did not have internet or did not have any like computer. Is that the case? And how much of what is going on in learning and homework and that sort of thing tied to the internet today? Greg, I'm going to start with you.
So the first thing that comes to mind is all of the smarter balance testing now is done on a computer. And so kids really need to have some fairly advanced skills at a young age to be successful on that test. They need to be able to manipulate a mouse. They need some basic typing skills, just in order to do the state assessments that are required. And we also do some local assessments that are on the computer that are a little bit easier, where you just have to pick the best answer. That's probably the best example. I think there's pockets where we're doing a lot more with technology in the classroom in terms of a learning tool, but we're really still learning to get really good at using technology as a learning tool, as not as a toy for kids to play with, but getting it to be a really focused tool that we have.
Okay, but you didn't answer my question about homework. So is the internet important? So it seems that we have more computer labs, we have more computers at school now. But what about, does it carry over to home? Is my child at a disadvantage if I don't have internet?
Sure, because just think about as adults how we use the internet every day with our phones. When we have a question, we look up things on the internet. So a kid is at a disadvantage. You know, all schools try to do things to keep computer labs open for extra time, possibly to check things out to kids, but not to have ready access to it can be a real disadvantage to kids.
That's bad.
It's tough.
That's sad. Okay. Keith, what has been your experience?
I agree. I think, you know, today a child without internet is at a huge disadvantage.
Oh.
In 5 years, it might be practically impossible if you don't have internet. And it's just, you know, an inconvenience. There's more and more assignments that require the computer or internet, so then you're trying to schedule a time to go to the public library or find a computer lab or struggle to get something done earlier. And I know personally, a lot of my students, we just use the internet. We are in contact, you know, throughout the school year. You know, 7 o'clock at night, I'll check my email and have 15 emails from kids with certain questions. And, you know, the students without internet can't do that. They can't, you know, reach me as easily.
Yeah. That is not a very good equalizer there, I'll tell you. Okay, because a lot of families have to choose other things before they choose the internet. They got to choose food. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about safety. So during the course of a school year, we hear about lockdowns and that sort of thing. Greg, tell us, why does a school go into a lockdown, and what is happening when that's going on?
So actually, in our emergency plans in Kennewick, we have 2 different kinds of lockdowns. So one is a kind of a lower level lockdown where we just lock all the classroom doors, but people are still in the hallways to some degree. And that might be just when there's an angry person in the office. We're really not sure how that's going to come out. And it's just a little extra safety protection for everybody. And then we have our more severe lockdowns where every one of our schools right now, with one button in the office, you can lock every door in the building and the whole place is locked down. The teachers get a signal at the same time and they lock all of their classroom doors. They put a piece of paper in front of the window and take all the kids back to the corner of the room. So we have two different levels really that happen within the school.
Oh.
And we practice them regularly.
Mm-hmm.
We even have had, we have a great relationship with our police department, and so we'll have our police department tour our schools with us, the fire department comes with us, and then we look through the building for places that we want to be sure to monitor, or problems that we might have during a lockdown. The police department will come to some of our drills and give us advice on how to conduct the drills, where we might improve things and make things safer for kids.
So, you know, oftentimes how parents might find out about a lockdown is that they see it on, you know, that the media provides the information. So, you know, the newspaper or a TV station or a radio group might put that piece of information out. What is a parent to do? Can they call the school? I mean, yeah, it's kind of a frightening time. So what do you do as a parent?
It's a very frightening time. You're exactly right about that. And the real challenge for us is when the school's locked down, it's locked down. Nobody comes and goes. We just recently made some modifications to our procedure where the police can get into the building. But before that, it's completely locked down. If I go to a building during a lockdown, I can't get into that building because we don't want anything opened up or any chance of a bad guy getting into the building. And so the challenge for a parent is you're going to have to go to our website or to the district office or to some kind of a central place to get information on the lockdown and what's going on at that school. And we understand that's a hugely emotional thing. You know, your child's in danger and you can't go to help them, because from everything that we've learned, the safest thing to do is to keep everybody out of the building, not open it up for anyone at all.
Mm-hmm. So you do keep your website up to date, so if the school goes in lockdown, there will be information up there fairly immediately for people to know.
Sure, there's information on the website, and then we also, folks can subscribe to I think it's a Twitter feed or a text message feed where they can get information directly from the school district about what's happening during that lockdown, where they could go to find out about their kids, where they can go for information. And occasionally, as part of our emergency plan, we'll even take kids and bus them to another location for parents to pick them up. and they could get all that information off our website or the Twitter feeds.
All right, that sounds really good. Anything that you want to add there, Keith?
Well, I know Christ the King, we use what's called Flash Alert. It's an app, and we usually use it hopefully for things like 2-hour delays or snow days, which all the kids love and the teachers hate. But parents just have to understand, as tough as it is, as soon as we can send out information on Flash Alert, we will. But we're not going to put anyone in danger just to send a group text message to everybody. As adults, we're trained to follow protocol and make the best decisions as possible. And then as soon as we can, we'll let parents know what happens.
Yeah. All right. That's good information. So let's say that I, as a parent, I learn about something that happened at school, and I really want, it could be about my child being involved in some bullying, or it could be a test score. It could be anything. How best do I interact with the school? What is your advice for me? That's what we want to know today. Best advice for parents interacting with school.
Well, personally, I prefer for parents to shoot me an email. I give all the kids and all the parents an email. Any sort of question, just email me first, and don't assume the best or the worst right away. So maybe think about what you're sending before you hit send, which is great advice for everybody.
That is really good advice. Man, where were you several years ago for me, Keith? Come on, where were you? I needed that.
I was hanging out with your son at college.
Yeah, that is true. Oh my gosh. I hope that you were good influence on him. I think that you were. My son and Keith were in a fraternity together, and they actually even shared a room one of their semesters, and it was back behind the kitchen.
Best room in the house.
Yeah, that's really great. All right. That's real good information, and we have learned a lot here. Are we at the end of this segment?
Well, we have 2 breaks left.
We do. If I don't have you keeping on track, I am just really off today. I think, you know why? It's Friday. Hey, we'll take a break here. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are talking about back to school for parents. We've got a caller on the line. We'll add them to our conversation right now. Hi, you're on the air with us on this Friday. How are you doing today? Hello? Hi, go ahead.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, you're on. Yeah. Go ahead and tell us what you're thinking about. Ooh, boy. Child. How old are you? How old are you? Oh. Okay, don't give us any more information. That's too much. All right, Keith, what do you have to, what can you offer with that?
I would, pick a teacher or an adult at the school that you trust and suggest a meeting between your parents and that teacher, that educator, that hopefully your parents know, and sit down as a conference, so the teacher can sort of be the mediator for you while you express your concerns to your parents. The teacher can add his or her input, and hopefully your parents will receive the message.
Maybe they'll disagree, though.
They might.
Yeah. All right, Greg, do you have any other ideas or any other thoughts?
I think another thing to think about is a lot of times when parents are overly involved, it's they're overly concerned too. And so one thing to think about is to sit down with them and do what we talked about earlier. So what's your plan for the school year? Talk with them about what classes you're going to take. What are your expectations for grades in those classes? What do you want to be able to learn and get out of all those classes? And try to be a step ahead of them through the whole process. But just keep talking to them, setting goals with them, and then reporting to them like, hey, I've got a B in my math class, I've got an A in my science class, so they know and you have good communication with them.
Yeah, good communication.